Hello, everyone. Welcome to all of our guests from around the world. Welcome to today's Sovryn Tea Twitter Space, where we're joined by Eden Yago, Dennis Porter, Greg Tanaka, Matthew Diemer, and myself, Magnus. So the topic of this space today, guys, is using Bitcoin to bridge political divides. We're joined by pro-Bitcoin figures from a variety of political persuasions across the world to see where we can find common ground with Bitcoin. Now, before we start tonight, guys, we were supposed to be joined by Lord Fusitatua from Tonga today, but sadly he's preoccupied with tsunami relief efforts. So we're going to pin a tweet of his if any listeners would like to join and donate Bitcoin or fiat for relief funds. So I'll pin that in a moment. But yeah, before we get into this, could I just ask all of our guests for a quick introduction? Yaga, most of us know you by now, but could you start, please?
Sure. So I'm Iago, longtime Bitcoiner, freedom and self-sovereignty advocate, and a huge supporter of Sovryn and an early contributor to the protocol.
Okay, maybe Dennis next.
Hey everyone, morning. My name is Dennis Porter. As of recently, I spent a lot of my time with my show, Smart People Shit, and I also put a good bit of time into helping candidates understand Bitcoin better and help position them to be able to win their primaries and their general elections. I also spend a lot of time advocating for Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining in policy. I think that Bitcoin mining is the most vulnerable industry in the United States or anywhere to political legislation or policy that could affect it. Whereas a coder can code around law and they can pretty much easily move wherever they want in the world. It is much more difficult for miners to move around. And also, I want to see the United States be a part of the future instead of the past. I think Bitcoin mining plays a big piece in that because Bitcoin mining will result in massive energy innovation around the world. And I just want to make sure that we here in the United States benefit from that.
Okay, and Matthew, would you like to speak? A little introduction.
What's up, everybody? Hey, thanks for having me. Dennis, good to see you again, my friend. And Greg, nice to meet you, too. My name is Matthew Diemer. I am running for U.S. Congress over here in Ohio, Northeast Ohio. We don't know the districts yet because the districts are still being hammered out in the courts and in the legislature. But I've been in the crypto space, Bitcoiner, since 2016 and been educating in this space ever since. I am currently the host of the Decrypt Daily, which is Decrypt Media's daily news show for the crypto space. And I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Thanks, Matthew. Looking forward to hearing more from you on it. And Mr. Greg Tanaka, would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone, and great seeing you again, Dennis, and thank you guys for the opportunity. So my name is Greg Tanaka. I'm a tech entrepreneur, so kind of during the day, I work on DeFi protocols, do a lot of work around Avalanche, a lot of work around machine learning, basically building kind of like a machine learning forecasting engine for DeFi protocols. I also serve on the Palo Alto City Council. In fact, last night was a pretty late night for me. We had a council meeting that went to, I don't know, past midnight. And so I'm an elected official. And then I'm also running for Congress. So I'm running here in Silicon Valley. We're in Congressional District 16. We just did some redistricting. So Matthew, I know what you're going through right now. So I'm congressional. I was in 18. I'm now in 16. And one of the big reasons why I'm running is I see that cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, is under attack. A lot of our political leaders just don't understand what's going on. The current incumbent that I'm running against, she'll be 80 this year. Not incredibly supportive of crypto, unfortunately. But kind of as Dennis mentioned, I believe that this is the future, not the past, right? This is something which is an incredible opportunity for our country to really get some incredibly more efficient financial innovations. And so I'm running because I really believe that we want to support crypto, not throw rocks in the road. But there are some in Congress, in our political leadership today that are not supportive and don't see it that way. So I'm trying to push against that. But thank you again for so much for the opportunity.
Thanks so much. And Councilman Tanaka, based on what you're saying, we were going to ask you anyway. You mentioned DeFi, Web3, and Bitcoin as core tenets of your campaign. Was this because the current Congresswoman was unfriendly? Why you were drawn to these in particular?
Well, Uh, it kind of started with the infrastructure bill. So the infrastructure bill, I don't know if you guys followed it. It has some good things in there, right? Because I think we do want to renew the infrastructure of our country. So, build new bridges, build new roads. That's all good stuff. But kind of, in the late hour, a provision was snuck in there that was nothing to do with infrastructure whatsoever. Basically, what this did was it made a lot of people who are not even close to being a broker be considered to be a broker. That means you need to know your counterparty's true name, their date of birth, their social security number, their address. You need to issue them a 1099. And if you don't do that, you could face 5 years of prison. So pretty crazy. Unfortunately, this is law. This got passed. Our president did sign this last year. And the Treasury Department right now is busy trying to implement this. And so I'm really glad to see guys like Matthew running because we need enough people in Congress to make this change, to actually stop it. Because if we don't stop it this year, and not enough of us make it to Congress, then next year it's going to be super bad news for a lot of people, right? The rules right now are really vague. It's hard to know how broad this will be from the Treasury Department. But unfortunately, a lot of folks in our political leadership today think that crypto is a bunch of anarchists, a bunch of tax cheats, a bunch of mobsters, trying to avoid the system. But it's not true, right? There's actually some true innovation happening here. And so people are really missing the mark. And so this motivated me. I know this motivated a lot of other people to run for Congress because we really need to change what's going on. The narrative, what people are thinking, what the political leadership, the current political leadership is thinking is so wrong, it's so antiquated. They think that this is a big Ponzi scheme, but it's not, right? There's some real value being created. There's innovations that are being enabled that haven't been able to be possible because of the current broken financial system. If you think about our country and you think about how much of our GDP goes to the financial system, it's incredible, right? It's like, I don't know, I see different reports, but it could be upwards of 20%. So that means 20 cents of every dollar goes to the financial system, right? So you think about Visa, they take 3% for doing what, right? You think about, like, I have Schwab. So Schwab, they charge me 25% on my credit card, but only give me about 0.2% of interest on my savings account. So why is there a 100x spread, right? On DeFi, I could stake and get like 20% interest by staking, USDC on Beefy, right, as an example, right? So why is there such a spread in terms of what you are charged and what you get? So I think the narrative has to change. I think we need to have some new leaders in Congress because without that, we have this old way of thinking that is just totally antiquated for where we are in this country right now.
I think everyone on this call probably agree with everything you've said, and we're actually turning that towards Matthew in northeastern Ohio, very different part of the United States from Silicon Valley, where Greg is. Were it similar reasons that Bitcoin became a central premise of your campaign? Was there more of a Ohio focus?
Look, first of all, I didn't sleep well last night, so if I'm a little slow today, I apologize. But I don't want to say Ohio focus. Obviously, running for Ohio here, I want to make sure as much jobs, innovation, it comes to Ohio. But I want to just echo what Dennis said. It's like, where is this going to be set up? Where is the future going to be set up? Where is the innovation going to be set up? Who's going to have those jobs? What the infrastructure is going to be made? Is it going to be made somewhere else around the world, or can we do it here in the United States? Look, we can't stop fighting it. We have to stop this idea of fighting innovation. Every time something new comes out, people fight it. The internet, fight it. Electric cars, fight it. Green energy, fight it. This is something else that's new. Let's stop fighting it. Let's make sure that we embrace it, put it here in the U.S., create good jobs, create the infrastructure to have entrepreneurs come in here and start building. And just like Greg said, man, we need more people in Washington to make sure that this gets through. And people that are younger, people that are tuned into tech, people that are tuned into the future. What does the future of America's infrastructure look like in the late 21st and into the 22nd century? It's people that are going to be in Congress now. Our choices that we make and who we vote for now, that's going to set us up for the right path of the future.
Man, Matt, you said you didn't sleep well, but I can't wait to see when you do sleep well. That was great.
Bro, coffee, bro. Lots of coffee.
Espresso.
Yeah, I was
Absolutely
up
agree.
super late, so
Yeah, absolutely agree
I
with what
know what Matthew's
Matthew's
feeling.
saying around the future of the United States. I think it's really important that we protect this industry. We have the benefit of living in a country that's made up of 50 small countries, right? So that is one of the reasons why innovation tends to succeed in the United States. You have the federal government, sure, just like any other country, nation on the planet Earth. There's a massive centralized federal or nationwide governance. But here in the USA, we live in a republic where each state has its own rights and can protect itself from the federal government. That's why you have seen innovation be able to root itself. That's why you've seen industries that have been banned be able to flourish. Just look at the marijuana industry as of recently. I think like 23 states now have either medical or legalized marijuana, and it's still federally illegal to do so. So I feel very positive about this concept that Bitcoin mining will ultimately survive in the USA, but we really don't need to be fighting this thing. It's going to drive jobs. It's going to drive tax dollars. It's going to drive energy innovation, which is something I'm extremely excited about. I think that because a lot of people will listen and they'll say, "Oh, I don't like Bitcoin mining. It uses up a lot of energy." No, that's a good thing. It's a really, really good thing that it uses up a lot of energy. Energy is not bad. The more energy that humans have produced, the better the human condition gets. That's just that's been true since the beginning of time. The more energy we're able to produce, the cheaper we can produce it. We can do bigger and better things. Right now, it's a very big problem to have a lack of fresh water around the planet. Well, guess what? It becomes a lot more affordable once we drive our energy costs down due to the innovation around Bitcoin mining, desalination plants. We'll be able to provide fresh water to the entire planet once energy becomes cheap enough. You want to know what else becomes cheap enough? Carbon capture. We can start sucking carbon out of the air just because of the cheap energy that was provided by Bitcoin mining. So ultimately, Bitcoin mining is an industry in search of the cheapest form of energy. That's all they're trying to do. All they want, super cheap energy, and they want positive or beneficial protection from their local governance, local political infrastructure. But that aside from the politics, they just want cheap energy. They're going to find the cheapest energy possible. And in fact, they can travel to places like the middle of nowhere, like in the mountains where there's a raging river, create a dam and be able to mine Bitcoin there. And then because of that, they've created a totally new energy asset. And there will also be massive amounts of R&D put into creating new energy sources, new energy assets. So really what's going to happen here over the next 50 years or so could happen slower, could happen faster. You're going to see an absolute just incredible breakneck movement in the way energy is produced and in energy innovation. You're going to see incredible amounts of money poured into R&D around energy. You're going to see massive advancements in the way that we create and produce clean energy in this country. So you should really be very excited about Bitcoin proof of work energy and the amount of energy it takes. I hope it takes more and more energy. This is a good thing. And in the end of the day, it's going to be a net positive for the country that decides to keep that innovation housed inside of its region. So China made the ultimate blunder to push the Bitcoin miners out of their nation. I think that's going to be, they're going to look back and say that was one of the biggest policy blunders by China in the last 100 years. They've made these policy blunders before when they've been challenged by innovation. They did it in the 1500s when they burned the maps to the merchant ships, to the merchant class, because the merchant class was going to come up and challenge the ruling elites. They did it again when they were supposed to leave the silver standard, and they didn't. They've historically made bad decision after bad decision because federal governments with too much power typically make bad decisions in order to entrench themselves and protect themselves. But like I said, here in the United States, we have 50 mini countries inside of one country, and those 50 little states can kind of middle finger the big one and say, you know what, we're going to do that anyways. And so, yep, big fan of protecting Bitcoin mining here in the USA. I think that's really what's going to change the picture and help drive the United States towards just a better future for all of us.
I want to add on to what Dennis said, if that's okay, unless you guys want to move on.
Shoot.
All right, cool, thanks. So I want to say, like, Dennis I feel is spot on with that. Look, the human race has always needed more energy. And I think that from a Western standpoint, we almost take it for granted that energy is abundant. It's everywhere. We can turn on our lights. We can open our garage. We can plug in our Xbox. And like people all around the globe don't consume a fraction of what we consume here in the US. So we need to keep producing more and more energy. And so I think the energy narrative around like Bitcoin mining is the wrong narrative. However, I do want to say that we do have to have carbon neutral or clean energy with doing it. So we need more energy, but where does the energy come from? That is still a question that we have to have and have to keep asking. And one thing that we heard in the energy committee the other day, which I thought was a very good conversation, is we never had like the standard everybody was looking for. Everybody would come in and say, Bitcoin uses too much energy. It uses as much energy as Norway or something. But what is enough? So, like, for example, Intel came out with more efficient ASIC chips that they said they're going to, announce in February. So if that reduces the miners, energy consumption half, is that okay? Or if it reduces it even more than that, is that okay? And we have the gaming industry using 70 terawatt hours a year of energy, which is half of what Bitcoin is using right now. So if we get down to that, is that okay? So I think that we just have to have conversations around standards. And then obviously, my opinion is we have to start really looking at and focusing where that energy comes from. And Dennis was spot on with that. It's like, look, $3 trillion of market cap. Well, not today. It's like 1.65 trillion, but $3 trillion of crypto market cap is out there. That is called GDP. That is GDP for a country. That is called opportunity that's knocking for a country, for a state, for a region, for jobs. Like, I don't know why people are fighting the creation of value, of capital, of markets. And I think that we really need to, start talking about what this is going to be a net positive for a lot of people, because people do see Bored Apes or whatever, and they're like, oh, I don't understand this. This is silly. This is crypto. That's what they kind of like see what's in crypto. But what it is creating is jobs, is creating that value for, these different countries. And another thing is, I think that we also have to start looking at the future. This whole idea of Web3 and decentralization and tokenization. These different things, when it comes to energy, when it comes to finance, when it comes to, you're going to be empowering people once this becomes super mainstream. I'm not just talking about, everybody has a wallet or, things like that. But when you're able to tokenize bits of your energy because you have solar or you have your electric car and you can sell that back to the grid, and you can do that in micropayments, and you can actually start being part of this. You can tokenize, say, the permissions of your data, the different ideas of, moving that value around. And that's going to be done with micropayments. That's going to be done with crypto and decentralization. And I'm looking forward to it.
I just want to hop in here one more time real quick, just because this conversation is super important around energy. One of the other things that's going to happen once we make energy extremely cheap and affordable is you'll see that the cost of energy will drop dramatically. And this is really good, not just for here in the United States, it's good for emerging markets. So if you worry about emerging markets, if you worry about third world countries and you think that it's unfair that they live on a lower standard than us, one of the main reasons or drivers for the lower living standard is the cost of energy. In most emerging markets, the cost of energy is triple the cost here, and yet they make probably a fraction of what the money that we make. So a large majority of their income goes towards energy production and energy in the home. So most people end up not being able to even afford to power their homes. They have to use biomass like wood to cook their food, and millions of children and millions of families and individuals die every year from using biomass in their homes to heat their homes, to cook their food. So if you care about emerging markets, you care about third world countries coming up onto the standard of the first world countries, then that's a big part of it. I think, it's also something to be said that we need to stop shying away from nuclear energy. We've been using nuclear energy successfully for decades inside of aircraft carriers and nuclear submarines literally with zero incidents. So it's really this thing. It's kind of like the boogeyman that everyone doesn't want in their backyard. But what's going to end up happening is people are going to create nuclear power plants in the middle of freaking nowhere because they can just install a bunch of Bitcoin miners around it and immediately create the situation where the nuclear power reactor is profitable, right? And we can do it in a way where it'll help get passed, because there's like a board here in the United States that doesn't pass any of these new nuclear facilities a lot of times because they're too close to cities and to where people live, and people don't want that. So that's going to be a big thing moving forward. We need to make sure we stop being afraid of nuclear. Nuclear is literally the cleanest energy on the planet. It's the most energy dense form of energy production on the planet, and it's going to help drive us towards a clean and renewable energy future. And also, just so those that are listening know, Bitcoin mining is one of the cleanest energies on the planet. So in the United States, the energy mix is roughly 30% clean energy, but Bitcoin miners are using roughly 56% renewable energy. So it is one of the cleanest energy industries on the planet. And it's also gaining in efficiency over time constantly, right? Because the mining hardware has to keep up with the halving and has to keep up with the increasing hash rate and the difficulty adjustment. So last quarter, I think we gained 9% efficiency. If you were to go, like, let's say you're a CEO of an airplane company and you were to go to your board and you're like, listen, I just created a way for us to gain a 9% increase in fuel efficiency for our airplanes. Like, they would be like, oh my gosh, we need to like give this guy a massive bonus. Like, the whole industry would worship you and praise you because a 9% efficiency gain is unheard of. Like, nothing like that has happened in the airline industry for decades. So that just happened last quarter. And the quarter before that, I think it was like 17%. So Bitcoin mining is becoming extremely efficient. It's also driving us towards better innovation around chip manufacturing and may actually bring and incentivize chip manufacturing to the United States, which is something that's a really big problem here, right? It's a national security issue. So Bitcoin mining like solves a lot of problems, and people are really looking at it the wrong way. They think, oh, this energy use is bad. It's boiling the oceans. We should move to proof of stake. I mean, if you want to do proof of stake with like, you know, your Bored Apes or your gaming or your NFT, any of your NFTs or your smart contracts, fine. But when it comes to the money, we need to make sure the money is protected via proof of work, and also that the money being protected by proof of work defends Bitcoin appropriately, but also drives us towards that green, renewable, clean energy innovation future.
Dennis, I think that's really well said. I think in 10 years, we're going to look upon the China banning of Bitcoin mining or mining in general as one of the biggest gifts to this country. And so we want to take advantage of that. And I think what Matthew and Dennis are talking about is basically the digitization of energy, where instead of having to string a bunch of power lines, you can actually digitize it. So that means all that stray natural gas that's being released into the atmosphere or burned off, all that flare energy can now be harnessed to mine Bitcoin. And I think Dennis is also spot on in regards to nuclear energy. In fact, it's one of the policies of my platform. And this is probably only one of the really key tools needed to be able to fight climate change. If you try to fight climate change just with renewables, it's like going to battle with one arm behind your back, and this makes no sense. And this whole fallacy about how much energy it takes to mine Bitcoin is really really wrong. Because if you think about like just the dollar, how much money do we spend securing, or how much energy is spent to secure the dollar, right? You have to print a dollar, you have to make sure there's no fraud, you have to send Brinks trucks all over the place, right? You have to have physical banks, right?
You have the U.S. Army.
That's right, the U.S. Army. That's right. You know, the FBI. If you think about all the energy and work that goes into just securing the U.S. currency, it's tremendous, right? It's nothing compared to what Bitcoin uses. And I was listening to this interesting podcast, and it talked about the idea of, I guess a few hundred years ago there was this idea of separation of church and state, but that was the founding of our country, right? So we keep the religion separate from the state. And I think what Bitcoin does that I think is kind of interesting is that it's kind of the separation of money and state. Because historically, governments have, almost every single government has kind of inflated away their currency, right, at some point in time. And by separating money and state, right, where you have this secure, sound money supply that can't be inflated away, that politicians can't put their hands in the cookie jar to try to fund their favorite program by inflating their currency. I think this is a big revolution, and we may look upon this time as a time as big as the concept of when we had separation of religion and state, church and state. I think this is the direction we want to go. It's more energy efficient. It provides sound money. It provides financial efficiencies, and I think it's actually a lot more democratic. It's a lot more aligned to the principles of this country. And I think if we think about Bitcoin and to a large extent crypto, it's actually something that can unite all of us, all of humanity, not just the nation, not just the state, but all of humanity, right? It doesn't know a border, right? I mean, I think the biggest demonstration of that is China. So China came down super hard on mining, right? Before China cracked down on mining, most of the mining was done in China. If that couldn't take down Bitcoin, what can, right? That shows you the strength. And this is almost like a super nation, right? It's almost like its own religion in some ways because it's unstoppable, right? Even, one of the most authoritarian governments, when they try to crack down on Bitcoin, it bounced right back, right? it's like water. You just couldn't hold it. And so I think this is something that is interesting, is that there might be this separation of money and state, and also we might see these super nations form from these cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. But I think what our country should be doing is, rather than putting crazy stuff into the infrastructure bill that makes everyone a broker and has all this arduous, onerous reporting requirements, what we should be doing is doing things like a holiday on capital gains. So like for cryptocurrency. So if you think about the early days of the internet, like 1995 of the internet, there was no sales tax on e-commerce. And this allowed e-commerce to flourish. And can you guys imagine if we had this pandemic without e-commerce? I mean, we would be really screwed. And so just like there was this kind of tax holiday on e-commerce, I think we should do the same thing with cryptocurrency to kind of encourage the adoption and innovation in the space. But instead, a lot of our politicians see dollar signs in their eyes, think, oh yeah, we could tax all these guys and we could just kind of squash this industry because it's full of fraudsters. But they are absolutely mistaken. The one thing that does kind of worry me, and I think Matthew touched upon this, is we saw the market cap go from like $3 trillion down to, I guess, 1.6. We had a bit of a correction. That's probably everyone on this spaces knows about. And the one thing that I am concerned about, and I think that we have to be really cognizant of, is that we don't lose the focus, because I think this year is a critical year to get members into Congress, to stop what happened in the infrastructure bill. But I know that as the market cap drops, our political clout is dropping a bit. And so I think it's really important that we stay focused on this, that we rally people to make sure that we overturn what has been passed. Because if it doesn't, I think we're going to have a really hard time next year as an industry. So I really appreciate guys like Matthew running.
What are you guys seeing in terms of the political uptake of this amongst the politicians and the lobbyists that you are talking to, as well as your constituency?
So I gotta jump for another thing, and I'll join back a little bit later. But I would say that there hasn't been a lot of excitement. A lot of our members in Congress just don't get it. They don't understand what all the excitement is about crypto, around Bitcoin. They don't understand the promise of this. So a lot of education is needed. And frankly, I think there has to be probably new leadership, because some of them maybe never get it. But thank you so much for the opportunity. I'll join you just a little bit after I do my other meeting. Okay, but thank you.
All right, thank you. So
I think,
go on.
yeah, as far as what I'm seeing, I think I see, or I know I see, a lot of activity. There is an ever-growing number of members of Congress that understand and support Bitcoin, or understand and support maybe the broader crypto space. A lot of them are starting to realize that this is the next wave of innovation, and we do need to protect and defend it instead of trying to fight against it. We've also seen very large advancements from the left, from Democrats on the Hill, who have been working to defend Bitcoin. So after the crypto tax reporting amendment passed in the infrastructure bill, 10 members of the Democratic Party signed a letter, to Nancy Pelosi saying that we should challenge the crypto reporting tax amendment. And then members of that letter also joined with those on the Republican side of the aisle to write a bill called the Keep Innovation in America Act, which would help to right the wrong that was put inside of the crypto tax reporting amendment. I also call it the attack on Bitcoin, or the attack on the crypto space, because that's really what it was. I think it was Greg earlier that brought up the redefinition of anyone involved in Bitcoin, including the miners, the software developers, the hardware developers, the node creators, runners, and operators. Every single point of the Bitcoin network that has any place in touching a transaction, which is like the whole thing, was relabeled as a broker. And unfortunately, when you're relabeled as a broker, you are required by the government to report on those transactions. So you were forced to report KYC AML information to FinCEN, which would be impossible because, as you know, when it comes to Bitcoin, there's no third-party information shared. So if I go and buy something on the Bitcoin network, there's no third party that I have to send my information to in order to transact on that network, which is not true with Visa, MasterCard, or any other network that you use today. You have to give them your name. You have to give them all of your information, KYC, it's called Know Your Customer, your banking account, all this stuff, right? Like every single piece, like even your social security number most of the time. That's not true with Bitcoin. It doesn't require any sort of KYC in order to use the network. But that's kind of like the loop around for how the government spies on you, right? Those, like, it's called the third party doctrine. Like, you have no reasonable right to believe in your privacy if you share your information with a third party. And then the government forces that third party to share that information with them. So on Bitcoin, none of that information is shared. So it's impossible for a miner or a node operator, a wallet provider to force you to give them the information in order to use the network. This basically puts a gun to the head of the entire industry and says, like, okay, we know this is impossible for you to do, but you're supposed to do it. So then what's the end result? Either the government aggressively goes after those various members of the Bitcoin network, or they pick winners and losers, right? Which is the government's favorite place to be in. They just love to be able to have the power to choose who can win and who can lose. And that would ultimately, that power would be given to them via the crypto reporting tax amendment. The other thing that's 6050I is another very dangerous part of this legislation. It's a massive invasion of privacy. They basically are applying what is cash laws around cash transactions to Bitcoin and crypto payments, except for it's even more aggressive. So today, if you spend $10,000 anywhere, it doesn't matter. Even if you give it to a friend or a lawyer, which is crazy, right? Because your lawyer will have to snitch on you. You have to give a report, fill out a report, and they will submit that information to the IRS. And that's for $10,000 or more, right? It seems kind of fair, some people could say, right? But when that law was created, and it's $10,000 was equivalent to today's $67,000. It was part of the Bank Secrecy Act to kind of prevent money laundering, right? Sure, whatever, right? But at the same time, that's cash transactions, completely untraceable transactions that are occurring with cash payments. They're applying that same law to Bitcoin and reducing the number to $600. Like, it's a very, very low amount. And when they do it, they're saying like, oh, we're going after these super wealthy, ultra wealthy billionaires. We got to stop these people from taking advantage of the system. $600, like, man, I spend $600 on or more on rent. Like, the average person spends $600 pretty regularly. So trying to apply cash laws around traceless cash payments to Bitcoin, which is a digital payment, and that is not totally untraceable, just doesn't make sense. And it's just an overreach by FinCEN to be able to have them ever look into your life and be able to spy on you even more than ever. And it's something that I think we should fight back against, because it's a dangerous journey that we're headed on, where we don't have any sort of privacy whatsoever. So 6050I and the broker definition in the crypto tax reporting amendment, very dangerous. And I'm really looking forward to having them removed. Kind of to finish out there, yeah, there's a lot of good things happening. We also see a bill coming from Senator Lummis's office, which I'm hoping that Ron Wyden gets behind as well. And I'm really looking forward to promoting that bill in the halls of Congress and getting it passed.
And just to, I kind of want to go back to energy for 1 second. And just because we are all about, tech and looking forward to the future. And just remember just, a little bit ago, I think it was a month or 2 months ago, China had a fusion reactor, not fission, but fusion reactor on for 17 minutes, burning at around 70 million degrees Celsius. So, we're just making literal suns on Earth now. And I think that you want to talk about looking at, sustainable energy to the future, we should be doubling down on innovative energy tech and really, trying to move that forward, especially here in the U.S. And we're talking about all these things, but that is literally the holy grail of energy production if we can get that, working properly. But what I'm seeing is is I think Greg, before he popped off, was right. We see a lot of the old guard, really not liking change and new things. And the new people that want to run for Congress, are younger. They're coming from a different generation, and we're also being raised in I guess an environment of division, and we're just sick of it. And so ideas, solutions, discussions, debates, we're welcoming that. We want that. We want to talk about it. We want to find actual solutions. We don't want to divide. We don't want to, just, tear it apart, but we want to figure out how to work together. And what's the best solution for our neighbors, for our communities, for our states, for our country? And so that's what I see from, the new people that are running for office right now, if it's the Congress, if it's state house or state Senate, or even U.S. Senate, new people that are running really want to find solutions. And, another real good supporter of ours, Erica Rhodes of California 32, she wrote something yesterday, red flag, putting down one solution, but unable to offer a better one. And, I think that that's what our generation of people who are running for office right now are thinking. It's like, don't put down our solutions. Don't put down our ideas. If you don't have anything else to bring to the table, look, we see the systemic issues when it comes all over the board, from finances to energy to whatever problems that we have in society right now. And solutions are being offered all the time. And all they're doing from the old guard or from party politics is being swat down. And I think that the new people that are running are just not having it. We want to welcome those discussions. And so that's what I see. I see that we have a really good future if we can get different people elected into the federal offices.
I think one of the things that you guys are mentioning seems to play along a theme, which is bigger and broader than Bitcoin, but which Bitcoin plays a very important role in, which is a forward-looking versus a backwards-looking agenda, right? So build back better and make America great again. There's something nostalgic about both of those, where I think we have a innovation agenda versus a Luddite agenda, which isn't often discussed. And I'm wondering to what extent you feel like this cuts across party lines. Like, is there the risk of Bitcoin and more broadly innovation becoming a partisan issue rather than a cross-party issue?
I mean, I think that everything is up for a partisan issue, and I think that's the scary part about it. We already see that crypto is becoming a partisan issue. Why? Because a senior person on one side says one thing, and the senior person on the other side says another thing, and then people start filing into their corners that for whatever they're talking about. So I think that partisan issues are being created because of the ease to file people in one way or the other. I think that's one thing that we have to continually, and I think this is what we're doing here, and I think that that's what Dennis does, and I think that's what other people that are advocating here and running for Congress as these new members, is to stop with the partisan and start looking at the solutions. And we've seen it throughout my whole life. I'm 42 years old, and I've seen Congress swat down bills that might have been great ideas because they came from the wrong party. And then when the other party's in power, bring that old bill back up, put a new label on it, and try to go pass it. And that's the problem. And that's what people are so pissed off about, is that we're not talking about the solutions. And look, everything can be politicized. Everything can be, and when I say politicized, meaning shuffle into one side and shuffle in the other. And that's, I think, one of our jobs is to keep talking, keep breaking down those barriers. And if one person in the space or in politics says that this is a certain kind of ideology or issue, knock it down, have the conversation, and open that up and make it more broad.
And so what do you think we can do to make sure that Bitcoin doesn't become politically captured? It doesn't become a Republican thing or a Democratic thing, and then as a result, becomes, the other party by default becomes anti.
Shut it down. And I think that doing what you're doing now, inviting, different. I honestly don't know what party Greg was, to be honest with you, and I don't know how anybody on this call affiliates. I don't know how Dennis affiliates when it comes to party, but we're talking about the solution. We're talking about the tech. We're talking about ideas. And when we have when we see that it starts getting partisan, call them out, bring them on. It's like if it's like I don't know, one side says, this is one thing, and you see people shuffling. Let's open that conversation out and just keep driving the narrative that this is not a partisan issue. We're talking about solutions for America. We're talking about solutions for the world, and we cannot keep the same, mentality and the same way moving forward. Again, by doing the same thing over and over and over again, we're going to keep getting the same results, and which is absolutely crazy. And we need to get new results because we all are yearning for it. And I think that's the solution, is just to keep shutting down these, when you see things getting partisan, and just bring everybody back together, or the people who are trying to drive that partisanship, shut them down and start having, productive conversations.
One of the bigger conversations here that I've been trying to talk more about why politics to some degree is broken in the United States is because there is just way too much money at stake. The federal government has control over the unlimited money printer, and they have control over where the unlimited money printer is spent. So the average member of Congress, and this is including senators and representatives, has a share of that $9 trillion federal budget, which is arguably much higher when you calculate all the other aspects of money printing into the calculation. But Matthew Diemer, if he were to win his position, out of all the members of Congress, would have his share of that federal budget be $16 billion. So you quickly start to realize it just makes sense for someone who has a lot of money and wants to control the unlimited money printer to drop $5 million into Matthew's campaign to either help him or to run against him, because maybe he isn't going to spend the unlimited money where they want the unlimited money to be spent. Once we get rid of the ability for the federal government to pillage its own people, the central bank to pillage the users of the dollar across the globe, it starts to take away the incentive for big money special interests to get involved in politics, because you can't stop that, right? Like back when Citizens United was created in 2011, it allowed unlimited amounts of money to be spent in political campaigns. You can create a super PAC, you can raise $10 million, and you can literally just spend every penny of that fighting for or against whatever candidate you want in any race that you want. And corporations can do this as well. So it's a real travesty what's happened here in the United States, where we've allowed all this money in. But at the same time, it's because we print so much money, because there's so much power at the federal government level. Why do you not see all of this money being spent on the state level? Probably because they don't have an unlimited money printer. In fact, here in Oregon, you can legally spend as much money as you want on elections. Okay, well, why aren't people spending all of that money? Because they just don't have that much power. It's not that important to win the state legislator as it is to win the federal government, right? Because the federal government has the control over that money printer, and they can spend it how and where they want. So it's divided the people from what they actually want. The representatives are more beholden to the special interests, because everything that you do when you're a representative, regardless of your values and what you believe in, when you go to office, know that if you vote a certain way on a certain bill, there are times when that can have a massive impact on your next election. And if that if you vote the wrong way on a bill, that someone will drop $10 million into a race to oppose you, you're going to think really long and hard about, is this the thing that I die on? Is this the hill that I die on? It's come down to like almost every person in office has one issue that they can fight for and one thing that they can go after, because if they try to fight any other battles, they're going to get destroyed. So that's all comes down to this idea that there's just way too much money in politics, because there's way too much unlimited money to be printed and there's way too much money to be spent. And so these big money special interests are taking away the power of the people. But it's not even really their fault. It just makes sense. It just makes economic sense to do that. So we can't keep saying, oh, we need to get money out of politics. We need to stop the special interests from dropping this money in. Like, no, they're always going to find a way in because the incentive is too strong to be close to the unlimited money printer. And the first time in human history, this is not new. This is something that's happened throughout history for 10,000 years. For 10,000 years that we've had money, or more, it could be longer, some say, we have been finding a way as human beings to get close to where the money can be created and debasing it. Now we have a money that can't be debased. And because of that, it's going to take the power away from the political class and give it back to the people and give it back to the productive class. And that's going to have a massive shift on politics. That's the real conversation here is we need to get the money out of politics, but not through legislation or policy. We just need to disincentivize people from wanting to drop $10 million to support or oppose an individual candidate in a race that really, I mean, it's like what? Matthew, how many people live in your district? How many people are inside of your district in Ohio?
785,000.
785,000 people there. And oftentimes in races like this, you'll see $10 million dropped on just 785,000 person race. Like that just doesn't make sense. Like why? And it all comes down to the ability, if they do that to enough people, if they get enough people in Congress, they just spread their money around, they will be able to impact policy on where the unlimited money is spent or not spent, right? Because what happens when you take over the federal government? You get to use the federal government not only to help yourself, you get to use it to politically attack your opponent. And this is another big conversation around why we need to get the money out of politics, because controlling the federal government is such a powerful position now that the left and the right, Republicans and Democrats, are willing to literally destroy each other when they get into office. They weaponize legislation. They weaponize the money printer against each other because it's such a powerful weapon. They're willing to do whatever it takes to get into office. They're willing to lie, cheat. They're willing to do anything. And that's why you also see, I think, this advent of this political class that really doesn't have any values. They don't represent the people. They're there just to get things done for their side. And that's all they care about is winning. And I think we need to make sure that we get back to a place where our representatives are representing the people and are there to help all of the people from on both sides of the aisle and not just like lobbing grenades at each other across the aisle, because the divide is too great. When you get too far away from each other and the divide is too great, that's when you start to look and see and point your finger at the other side. You're like, that guy is my enemy. That person over there is my enemy. But really, they're actually just another person, another American citizen, another individual. And we're really not that far away from each other as they would like us to think.
Hear, hear. Very much so. Hey, so guys, we're going to open up to questions now because we're already starting to get requests in. I'm going to accept one right now. Orange Pilled, would you like to, you have the floor. Would you like to ask a question?
Thanks everyone for doing this. Always enjoy these spaces. Dennis, thank you for coming on. I'm not sure how to focus this, and I speak for myself only when I'm saying this, but one thing I'm hoping some people like you and me, we all together, is making Bitcoin apolitical to the point where if you don't support Bitcoin, you're flawed, regardless of the rest of your policies. Because I think we run a little bit of a dangerous path. I probably almost have zero political similarities to Dennis or Ankara in Southern California, but my desire to see Bitcoin affect the system worldwide and in America is greater than any of those differences, because I think the incentives that Bitcoin will create over time will work itself out. I'm not as idealistic as Dennis in hoping that we're going to reduce the vitriol that politicians have in general, that human nature has, unless the incentives are corrected, which I think Bitcoin does. So I was hoping, Dennis, you could talk a bit more, and maybe others elaborate on how, as much as I hate to say, a centralized way of combining monetary efforts to just make Bitcoin a centralized issue when it comes to political candidates, whether the right or the left. At this stage of the game, I don't care. I have very, very huge disagreements with some politicians, but if they support Bitcoin, I know long game it's going to work out better. So I was hoping you could maybe talk a bit more about approaches that are underway where people could go to help support that now or in the future, and what we can do to hopefully facilitate that on all sides. I'm not sure. Hopefully that makes sense, and I'll turn it over to you guys now.
Yeah, I just wanted to I just wanted to say one thing really quick is that the answer is that Bitcoin is the working people's money. And these things, as the Federal Reserve goes off of this quantitative easing, it is going to turn into a class issue very quickly. So making Bitcoin the power of the working man is on both parties' sides. So making this the power of the people and the working man's money is the key component. The real question I have for you guys is that, these DeFi protocols, the answer is, how do I get my grandmama to use it? And the political divides on this aspect of getting that learning barrier of the working people's money is that component that I think is that bridge that how do I get my grandmama to understand these types of things that's all.
In regards to the efforts that are taking place, there's a lot going on. What's the saying? It's like there's a lot of action going on under the waves, but oftentimes you don't see what's going on the surface. So there's many organizations that have been created or in the works of being created, trying to position themselves to have an impact on the political infrastructure in the United States. The problem is, and it's, to some extent it's a good thing, like you can't just like run in and have this massive impact right away. Like you have to do the work. And then there's several organizations that are doing the work. You have the Bitcoin Policy Institute at Bitcoin that was kind of spawned off from some of the people at Bitcoin Magazine. You have Bitcoin Today Coalition, which has CJ Wilson, Amanda Cavallari, as well as several other really super active Bitcoiners like Jimmy Song. You have also there's another one out there. I'm trying to remember the name of it right now. There's several organizations that are being built up in a way to position themselves to directly engage with members of Congress. Just like a few days ago, I think Amanda Cavallari and Gary Leland met with 8 senators in Detroit. So there's a ton of stuff going on. But as far as what for the average person to get engaged, yeah, I think there are opportunities coming for people to become more engaged and to have an impact. But really, the best impact that you can have right now is just to get engaged at your local level. Like politics really is very local. So if you are from my area, which is like Portland, Oregon area, you would go to your local offices and say, hey, I want to make sure that Bitcoin is protected here. And then I would send letters, and then I would call, and I'd go to the events. In the end, what you're trying to do is instill into the mind of the people that are running for office that this is such an important issue that you would show up. So are you willing to show up? If you're willing to show up for Bitcoin, I mean, I know a lot of you are, because I've seen you guys at events. You go to every meetup, you go to every conference. You want to work in the space, go show up, go write a letter, go call, and make these elected officials and people running for office realize that there's a real group of people here who are willing to fight for this issue. Once they see that, they make a calculation in their brain. Okay, so there's a group of people that really feel passionate about this thing called Bitcoin, and I don't really have a very strong opinion for or against it. Doesn't seem to clash with any of my other ideas. Okay, yeah, maybe I should, this would be a free and easy way to get more voters, because that's what they do. They say, okay, what's my current coalition? My current coalition is XYZ. If you're on the right, you're like 2A, pro-life. I'm just going to list off a couple because I'm not really like, it's going to vary for someone on the right or the left, right? On the left, you're like, it's the opposite, right? It's the total opposite. But Bitcoin doesn't contradict any of those issues. The biggest thing when you're running for office is when you decide to add a new group of voters to your block or your coalition, you add blocks of voters to your coalition. You make the calculation, can this new group of voters get along with the current set of people in my coalition? And Bitcoin is the one issue where it doesn't really contradict any issue. Like if you're on the left, there's no reason not to like Bitcoin. You could say some people on the left have an issue with the energy thing. I think that's being dispelled, and a lot of people on the left and the Democrats are starting to see that. And on the right, Bitcoin doesn't have an issue with any beliefs. So Bitcoin really is like the ultimate bipartisan or nonpartisan, or people say apolitical issue, in the sense that it can be absorbed into any coalition. And that's why I have been a big proponent of saying that Bitcoin is the greatest single issue voter block in American history, because there's a large group of people who will go show up, write letters, run for office, email their candidates, do events, lobby in DC. I mean, Amanda Cavallari and Gary Leland just met with 8 senators. Like, they just showed up. Why? Just for Bitcoin. That's it. And the reason is because we feel like Bitcoin is a moral imperative. We feel like the impact that Bitcoin will have on society is so great and so positive that it's something that we must fight for. And that's how single issue voter blocks are created. Oftentimes they don't feel like it even is a single issue. They feel like it's a moral imperative. You'll find that very common on both sides of the pro-life or pro-reproductive rights issue. Like, both sides of that, they think it's a moral imperative. They would be upset if you called it a single issue. Same thing with gay rights. I've had this personally happen to me. I said, those that are fighting for gay rights, it's a very powerful single issue voter block. And they're like, how dare you? This is a moral imperative. And I agree with them, because in the same sense, I think that Bitcoin is a moral imperative. And that's what causes people to fight for it, especially when they feel under attack. So Bitcoin recently went under attack, and now people are showing up even more. You want to attack Bitcoin? Well, we're going to fight back. So that's kind of just all ties into this thesis around why I think that Bitcoin is the greatest single issue voter block in American history, and that it's going to end up causing a lot of members of Congress to get on board on both sides of the aisle, because it doesn't contradict any of their current voter coalitions.
I agree with everything you just said, except one that I think it's super important to have a war chest that is completely dedicated solely to, whether right or left, supporting any candidate that's up against a anti-Bitcoin candidate. So it's purely, it's just streamlined there, and the support would be bipartisan. Is there any? I know you're working in some ways on that, Dan. Is there anything being built up in that regard where it would, my concern too is that the shit coins and altcoin people, they have a lot of money and power too, and they're probably the most likely ones to fight against Bitcoin in general, in my opinion, because monetarily it benefits them. Sorry, I started to jump 2 issues. Go ahead.
Let Matthew go, just because I've been talking for way too long. I am working on something. I don't know what it's going to look like or how it's going to be deployed, but it's going to involve working with everybody in the industry and getting various voices involved. So yeah, if that's something that interests you, is helping to build up a war chest. Obviously, I'm working towards helping to direct funds to the appropriate people that need it the most, to the campaigns that need it the most. So I will be working on that. I am working on that, but it's not really fully deployed yet. So I appreciate you, coming up here and trying to get me to talk about it a little bit. But it's one of those things where it's not really ready to be released. But if people are interested in helping me work towards that future, I would love to have people DM me. My DMs are always open.
Who will be the first political candidate to put all of their political donations on the blockchain for public audit?
First of all, there's a lot of questions here real quick. Orange Pill, there are actually a lot of PACs out there right now that are working on not only legislation, but also raising money. I know Dennis is working on that as well. The good thing about this being so early in the space is that, a lot of people can still do things and make those moves themselves as well. And I think that that's the great thing about, the space is, people who can come in and start forming their own PACs and then merging those PACs or raising money, creating a DAO, and so on and so forth to maybe, pull those resources together. And then, but there are a lot of PACs out there. Obviously, I just spoke with a HODL PAC on Spaces last week. And I know a couple people that have been in politics, either campaign managers, or campaign directors for different congressional or Senate races that are now looking at these blockchain PACs and getting involved with them as well. Russ Bell, you actually said something about how do you get grandma to use it, and I want to answer that is I don't know if grandma's going to use it, but but everybody on this call are going to be grandpas and grandmas here pretty soon, so we will be using it. So it will flow with time. But I think that's also encouraging innovation. There's people that want to work on things, and if you heard Sam Bankman-Fried in the committee a couple months ago, I can't remember the date, but he said he was asked by Representative Anthony Gonzalez, who is actually over here in Northeast Ohio 16, which actually where I was going to be running in, but now it's 13. But he's here, but he's dropping out of from running again. He asked Sam Bankman-Fried, where is everybody showing up and developing? he's like, your company is where now? You know, he said, is it Hong Kong? Sam told him where the company is actually now. And he said, are people not here in America because of the lack of regulations, because of the lack of guidance, because of the lack of, or the instability or insecurity of starting a crypto business here? And Sam said, yeah, exactly. That's why a lot of people aren't here, but more people want to be here. And so if we can get it right in Congress and make the frameworks for people to be able to start businesses in the crypto space with Bitcoin and start innovating, I'm very sure that there will be companies and brilliant people out there that are going to make it very simple for grandma to use and hopefully make it simpler for me to use when I get older and I need to, you know, send my sats. Hopefully I don't lose my ability right now. I'm sorry, man, you asked one question just now and I totally forgot.
Oh, yeah. Who's going to be the first political candidate to put their entire political donation and where the money goes on a blockchain that's publicly auditable is going to be something that's going to transform politics, I think, in a very fundamental way as well, for both political candidates and for, churches or foundations, anything. I think we're going to be able to demand more accountability with those things. So I was just wondering if that has ever been talked about or is even possible.
It is. Actually, there's some people that are working on it right now. Here's the thing, and I would love more people to get in and start working on this. Every campaign and their donations and where money comes from is auditable right now and pretty transparent. Obviously, the PAC money is the real issue. Like, so if I get individual donations, every individual donation, how much it is, their address, everybody who donates has to be out there. So if they're not doing that, that's campaign finance fraud, and it's very, very illegal. But when it comes to Citizens United, that was a big mess up because now it's kind of murky. That I think is one issue, and I think turning back Citizens United might be a really good step. But to put the finances that we're getting right now, or the money that we're raising right now, into a more transparent way, I wouldn't mind it on a blockchain because it's already transparent anyway, and everything's reported. I just don't know the benefit because it's already transparent. It's the shadowy dark money that I think we have to, and that's just a whole, I think, legislative issue that we really have to work out. But I would be definitely up for it. But I again, there's links for my personal finances plus, the money that I raised for the campaign out there, and anybody can look at it anytime.
Okay, do we have any more questions, folks? Feel free to request to be a speaker and we will give you a shot. Don't be afraid, folks. Okay, guys. Well, in the meantime, there was a question that we here had at Sovryn for you, Matthew. In 2021, El Salvador was obviously the first country to make Bitcoin legal tender. Do you think that would be a step that would be something that the United States should do, or that's something that you would support any country doing?
I think that when I put this on the podcast, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, and when we're talking about that, it's how Bitcoin is going to be used and taxed, and how can we use Bitcoin in general. And I think that when we're talking about crypto and in general and protocols, DeFi, gas fees, minting NFTs, and whatever, there's so many different use cases for a digital asset that to try to have a one size fit all for the way that we look at that. Is it a commodity? Is it is it a store of value? Is it a currency? That it could be all and one. And I don't know. I think that we have to get down to the really nitty gritty of it and say, and start really just, looking at how are we looking at these as a country. And I honestly think that they could be one size fit all. So what you mean by legal tender, can we use it to buy things and I get taxed for it? Bitcoin can do that, especially if you send it lightning, and there's fees, and how does that look? And there's airdrops. Where does this come in? So, if you have Bitcoin, you go out and buy yourself, a new car or something with your Bitcoin gains. Then I don't see why that should be capital gains or a tax event. But and then there's other ways to look at it as well. So I don't know, but I can say that the way that I look at it is what is it being used for, and then we just put it in the right hole.
Sounds solid on this end. Do you have anything to add to that, Dennis?
Yeah, and we'll just wanted to go back a little bit to the conversation around finances and stuff, man. It's like reporting is very clear and very evident, and making any mistakes on campaign finance today is like a death sentence when you're running for office. So it's not a massive issue as far as I'm concerned, but just in the greater conversation of bringing both sides together, I think if we get rid of the ultimate incredible power the federal government has, you take the big money interests out, and you take the ability to weaponize the money printer against the other side away, you're going to start to see how the world is coming closer together. I think that a lot of us don't realize how toxic the money printer is to society. One of the greatest drivers of division in this country is problems around inequality. So because of the inequality that's driven in part because of the money printer and the way that we treat money in this country, what happens is you're debasing wages and savings of the average person, while at the same time making assets and college and all the things that people want, like retirement, more and more and more unaffordable. And this causes people to get, obviously upset, not only about their personal situation, but about the future, the potential for what lies ahead. And when people don't see a hopeful future, they start to point fingers, they start to blame, and they start to get upset. Obviously so. We've seen in history that this leads to really bad things. It can lead to like what happened in Weimar Germany when Hitler rose to power and started pointing fingers at the Jews. We saw this happen in the French Revolution when they started cutting the heads off of the wealthy people. When you make it impossible for people to get ahead and you remove all hope, people want to figure out why, and then they are really, really keen to allowing someone to get into power that wants to point fingers. And then you see really incredibly terrible things happen. We've seen it happen over and over and over again. So if we get rid of that process by which we can debase and destroy the money print, or by the money in our country, we can also go towards a future where I think people are just happier about where their lives are and where they're headed. And that's a big driver towards making us all get closer together and realize that we aren't enemies of each other.
I think Dennis just read Ray Dalio's new book. Man, you're literally talking like chapter 5 and 6 right now.
I read it a long time ago, but a while ago. Is it the new one, or which one is it? Which one are you talking about?
The new one. What is it called? Principles of something or other.
Yeah, that's the one I read. Yeah, it's a good book. It's really long. I don't know if I pulled that from there. It's like you never know where you pull this stuff from. Like I don't take credit for anything I say. It's all just like, pulling it from some of the giants in the world and some of the smarter people and trying to distill it down for the average person.
Sitting on the shoulders of
100%.
giants. Yep. Okay, so if we don't have any more questions, guys, be sure to follow Dennis Porter and Matthew Diemer. As you can tell, they're very, very switched on when it comes to Bitcoin, public policy, and all that jazz. And of course, follow us at Sovryn BTC. Thank you very much, guys, for joining us. It's been a very, very fruitful conversation, and you can tell we got some great people on board for the future of Bitcoin. So thank you very much again, guys. Be sure to follow them, and remember to stay sovereign. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for having us on.
All right, have a great one, everyone. Bye.